Bringing people into the St. Louis region is no easy task. It takes time and it takes a concentrated, intentional effort. I talked to Explore St. Louis about their new strategy to market St. Louis to visitors, to people wanting to invest here, and even to new residents. You've worked all around the country, including at Niagara Falls, which I'm sure is an exciting and fun place to promote tourism and visitorship.
Yes.
But what opportunities do you see here in St. Louis?
I see the fact that we have some incredible neighborhoods throughout the region, and those neighborhoods are each unique and different unto themselves. And to be able to really provide that story and narrative to highlight what is so special about St. Louis, and not to mention the culinary and the sports and the arts. Oh my gosh, it's just amazing. And to be able to build that and share it with the world as we get ready for our new British Airways nonstop from London into St. Louis is just really an opportunity that I think we all are looking forward to.
What else do you think is here that we can build on and that we can really promote in the region?
The people. St. Louis has the pride and the commitment to making St. Louis a better place is such a strong quality. And it's very strategic if you look at it from a holistic perspective. And the people, I have been out, this is my end of my second week, and I have been out and about meeting with businesses and partners and stakeholders. And what really came to mind was the pride that people have in St. Louis and that positivity. And if we can collaborate and pull that together, we can do anything. I always believe that belief is a superpower. And I think people believe in what St. Louis is and what St. Louis can become. And to me, that's very exciting because we can take St. Louis to the next level from a visibility and brand awareness perspective.
Yeah, how does this translate into marketing and a strategy for marketing the region?
That's a great question. Very great question. So St. Louis, we're going to be initiating a brand evolution. And what that means is to be able to pull in all of our stakeholders throughout the region and really fully understand what their perception is of St. Louis and how they feel we should move forward with a collective brand, an umbrella brand, so to speak. And from a brand, when you're looking at that, that will provide us insight and information on positioning and how we can compete with other destinations, and what is our emotional connection to people that are interested in coming to St. Louis. We've seen a large increase in our Gen Z travelers, visitors, and they're very experiential. They want to get out into the neighborhoods. They want to touch and feel and really dig into the culinary experiences and to go to our breweries. And, there's so much out there. And the Arts District, it is a place where they can really feel who and what St. Louis is.
Speaking of audience, I think a lot of times people here in the region maybe see St. Louis differently than someone might in Kansas City or Chicago or the coasts. How do you change the way St. Louis is perceived here locally as well? What's the key to reaching this audience here in the region?
It's a very important audience, and it's really with community shared values, and that's where the brand evolution will come in and really outreach from our organization and to meet with all the neighborhood groups and businesses, small business, because that makes up our visitor economy here.
We've been talking a lot on Forward about the tech industry and about the biosciences industry and the plant industry and all of the corporate interests here in St. Louis and how that helps drive the region forward and how there's a lot of commerce happening in the region that people don't always recognize too. How is our region's industry also part of our marketing strategy and of the visitorship that happens here in St. Louis?
That's a great question. So a couple of things with that. With having those corporations here, it allows us to be able to pull subject matter experts in order to provide potential conventions coming into the area in those particular fields, as well as friends and family. And if a corporation is relocating or if they are here in the St. Louis region, they want people to want to come and live here. And what is the reputation of the St. Louis region, and what are things to do, and those experiences again cross over into our culinary scene and history and culture and arts. So it's very important to build that narrative. I know I speak a lot about narrative, but it's really important to build that story, because if we don't have that story, then it may make it more difficult for corporations, number one, to determine that is St. Louis the place where they want to grow their business, as well as bring people in.
We'll hear more from Explore St. Louis tomorrow, but right now we want to hear from you. Email us at Ford@firstalertford.com and tell us, what do you think would get more eyes on the region?